Out of Burlington, Vermont. All right, Aaron Katersky, as we get going this morning. J-Dog, we kick off the post-Thanksgiving Day holiday and weekend. Unbelievable. With a pretty nice start to the day weather-wise, but a pretty good system overnight. I don't know if you were early morning hours, a lot of rain and wind, and we still have a pretty good size high tide coming in on the coast, about 11, and some gusty winds, but it's cleared out. Pretty wet overnight. You saw that system with some of the football games yesterday, Philadelphia and the Giants game and the Patriots. J-Dog, I have to ask someone I was with yesterday, my smarter, prettier, better half wanted me to ask you, what the heck? We're going to get to all the political stuff and the worldwide stuff, but J-Dog, that was awful. The Patriots. Why? But does he last the season? And what about is it Zap? Is Mac Jones done pretty much? I think as the starter. Yeah, just terrible, badly coached. I mean, they were getting how many delay games unintentionally? The interceptions. They just looked. First half, they looked like confused and lost. Unbelievable. It was tough to watch. And then in the end, the one I don't get, J-Dog, before we go to Paul Steinhaus with an update on the political front, the one that I don't get is you get, a little less than a minute. Patriots have time, though, and they come down, they get within field goal range, and we all know on earth that field goal should have been hit. We all know that. They iced him, and he missed it, probably nerves, pushed it. But, J-Dog, they had upwards of a minute, and they had no confidence to go for the touchdown. He just let the clock run down from like 50 seconds, 48 seconds, all the way down to 3 or 4 seconds to kick the field goal, so there's no time left, but they didn't go for the win. You had at least 2 or 3 plays. No confidence. And unbelievable is right. Yeah, pretty. I mean, I was in a bad mood. I'm not even a season ticket holder. Wasn't that a good game? Wow. The Eagles are for real. Yeah. And he does it without a lot of fanfare. He just is just low-key, sits. I know. All right. Hey, as we get going, a lot going on. You just heard from our national news on the Israel-Hamas truce as they continue to try to negotiate. We'll see where it goes for more hostage release. Border community crisis. We'll talk more about that, how migrants have literally moved into a part of the airport in San Diego. How's that working for you? But Paul Steinhaus reports nationally for Fox News, locally at GMI Studios. Paul, we entered that window before Christmas and New Year's, and then a couple weeks before the first primary. We entered that window with a lot of pressure, if you will, on the presidential front. Take it away, Paul. Good morning. Hope you had a good break. Oh, Paul. Hey, real quickly, I get a sense that the governor is going to jump into this primary sooner than later. Could even be some point this week, so maybe early next. And he's already when he was on the show last week. We did our show at Auto Fair Honda with the state police. He pretty much said it's one of the 3 governors. We know that Haley, DeSantis, Christie. Which one, if you had to say this morning? All right, Paul. Well, we'll see where it goes. And the bigger question, Paul, can anyone catch Donald Trump with the big lead here in New Hampshire and these other states? Is it pretty much unstoppable? Can anything change in the next 5? You mentioned 50 days to Iowa. Can anyone catch Trump? Humongous. That's a big word for a Monday. Thank you, Paul. Can anyone catch Trump? We'll see. Well, we're getting into that week, and it seemed to be a pretty I think a pretty nice break. I think a lot of people that were pretty much scattered throughout our region. A lot of people out shopping on Friday. Of course, today, J-Dog, what is Cyber Monday? Shop do you drop online? Shop do you drop online? You're not a big you're not a big online buyer, are you? Except for like Cleveland Guardian hats. Okay. What's going on with the Bruins too? They've been on a slide. All right, we have a busy show for you coming up. I do hope you had a nice break, nice Thanksgiving. I always think so many people enjoy it. It's a good time to get together with family and friends, and hopefully you had a good one as we get going. Hard to believe we're entering just not many more days left in this month. And then that rush to the end of the year, but we're not going to rush. We're going to slow it down a bit. Some of our regular contributors coming up. Anna Brown, Citizens Count, will kick off the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to hear from Brad Card, his thoughts on the focus now in the primary, as well as the House in Washington. What are they going to do when it comes to things like the Hunter Biden investigations? Also, Aaron Rial, ABC News Radio national correspondent, coming up. And a little bit later on, we'll hear from Tom Raphael with a busy weekend and some good news coming on as we get going on this Monday. But one of the stories, I don't know if you caught it over the weekend, I think there's so much, and I know there's a lot of focus with two wars going on in the world and a lot of back and forth with Israel and Hamas, of course, and the hostage situation, as well as the mess. And of course, what will happen next in terms of the rest of Hamas and Gaza. But the migrant situation in our borders, you're noticing much more talk. I've noticed much more talk. Nikki Haley has an ad on talking about border security. Over 300 migrants literally moved into the San Diego airport after the border city was hit by an influx of illegal crossers. You know, it used to be illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. Now they're called migrants, people that come across illegally into our country. A lot of these words are taken out, but the fact is they came in droves and literally have taken over San Diego airport and places in New York City and other other cities where they've just basically been overrun. The migrant crisis is becoming something that some of these people managing, and by the way, these are some of the states and cities that for a couple of years when this was happening in Arizona and Texas, they looked the other way. There's no crisis. Our border security is not a crisis. But when you look around the world in some of these recent elections where there were surprising outcomes, you're seeing this reality that border security, a secure border, is becoming much more important to most people. And you're seeing places like New York City where the folks there are just getting upset with the current administration, which in my humble opinion hasn't done enough to keep the border secure. So it's interesting, when Governor Abbott in Texas was dealing with this crisis, again, a lot of these northeastern areas, other parts of the country were just sort of looking the other way, saying, hey, it's not my backyard, so what do I care? Now we're realizing that it's pretty much in everyone's backyard. In other countries still. I mean, this is, we've seen this before, and people have very short memories. It's amazing to me in our country how short our memories are. I remember in the 2016 run-up when Trump beat Hillary Clinton before 2020, of course, in 2016. I don't know if you remember, the border was a big part of Trump's campaign. I don't know if you remember, build the wall, the border. A lot of people mocked him. They basically questioned, they didn't think it was that big of a crisis. Trump was talking about it, and it was a very thematic. You had the situation in Great Britain with Brexit. A lot of people in Great Britain felt that the country had lost a sense of a national identity. They didn't want invisible borders with the rest of Europe. And you looking around the world now, we're seeing this hasn't gone away. But this was a big discussion in the 2016 election where Trump talked about build the wall, protect our borders. And you notice Trump is turning up that rhetoric now, running again. He's talking about who he's going to, basically kick out of the country. And this whole sense of nationalism, if you will, is a very hot button issue. And it's going to be interesting to see between the parties. But when you read about certain cities and states where they basically can't handle the number of people who've come in to their city, their state, illegally. Remember when Governor Healy in Massachusetts and Boston called it a state of emergency because she said that Boston couldn't handle the number of migrants who now the city was trying to take care of no more. But again, none of these people spoke up. When you watch Texas and Arizona, some of the other border states deal with this crisis for years. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H, WTPL 107.7 FM, the Manchester Concord Corridor. J-Dog, you were up in Laconia, WEMJ 107.3 FM, 1490 AM, WASR as well, AM and FM on the other side of the lake. But you were up there for a pretty big holiday parade. Yep. Nice. Pretty nice weather, too. Pretty good showing all through Laconia. Awesome. And of course, Seacoast of New Hampshire up into Portland, Maine. They had a busy weekend, 1270 AM, 98.1 FM. Everywhere else, hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of NH. Skiing, a lot of ski areas got a jump on the Thanksgiving Day. It was more of a limited number of trails. They did get some snow in the northern areas. Some of the areas up and around Bartlett, Jackson, Bretton Woods getting a jump. But, of course, the official ski area, they're going to be opening in a few weeks. Tenny Mountain, the official ski area. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an Age. Hey, we'll be back in a moment as we get going on a pretty nice-looking Monday. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a moment. So, J-Dog, we're going to get into the politics 50 days before the Iowa caucus, before New Hampshire's January 23rd, first in the nation presidential primary. Welcome back, Jack Heath. J-Dog on the boards, the illustrious one. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving and a great holiday weekend. A lot of you did. Pretty much a lot of people since last Wednesday or even before were changing gears and chilling out, and that's always important to do. But we're getting going here on a pretty good-looking Monday. Good system overnight. A lot of wind and rain, heavy rain earlier this morning and after midnight last night, it blowing out, but it's still gusty on the coast. You might even see a pretty big high tide. I think at about 11 rolling in. Seacoast of New Hampshire up into Maine, Hampton Beach up into York Beach and Portland. Hey, J-Dog, I just have to get back. I don't agree with you on one thing, and I was thinking about it during the break. I understand, and Paul Steinhauser, it's going to stay on sports for a moment because it was a big sports weekend. By the way, J-Dog, I watched that Ohio State-Michigan game. Of course, Manchester's own Ryan Day, head coach of Ohio State. What a game. What a game. They're calling for him 11-1, right? 11-1. They're calling for some people, former Ohio State players, calling for Day's firing. Michigan will go play what? Iowa this weekend? Yep. 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 Yeah. I know. You could just see the bags under his eyes. I think he's great, by the way. Of course, great Manchester connection, Manchester, New Hampshire, Ryan Day. I I think Mayo. I don't know, but Jake, I got to go back to the Patriots. Why I don't agree with you on this, and I mean this is I don't think if you're Robert and Jonathan Kraft, you have if there was one or two games left this year, yeah, you could ride it out. There are just enough you can't. And I know that the Jets and I saw the Panthers yesterday where they have one win, Carolina Panthers. They stink. Yep. Well, and of course, a lot of teams are, but they're playing for probably draft picks. But here's the problem if you're the Patriots is money. I'm sorry, it's a business of winning. And your fan base, I was in a crappy mood when that game ended because I actually thought they had a chance and they were going to come back with Zappi and actually win the game. It was an ugly game overall. It's a cute story and a fun story about DeVito on the Giants and 12 miles. He grew up from the stadium and his family. That's all great, but it was a bad game. But the Patriots, you can lose games in the NFL, but you can't stink. You can't be that bad on the coaching and the execution if you're the New England Patriots. It's just people aren't used to it. Your fan base, your customers, they expect something more. Even if they fall short, they expect a good performance. It stinks. It was awful. And J-Dog, at the end of the first half, they went to the announcers. All four of them were just like it was the worst review. They just said, even Gronk was sitting there on the halftime stuff, and he said, I haven't watched a full half of my former team yet this season, and that stunk. That was that was terrible. It was awful. So I think Kraft has got to do something before the end of the season because he's got season ticket holders, J-Dog, that pay a lot of money for those season tickets. The ticket holders, and you don't want to start seeing empty seats on the remaining home games. And I think you got to shake up the storyline. I think he has to get along with Belichick, and I understand how good Belichick's been in the past, but I saw a team that, Belichick's famous line was, "Well, we don't want distractions. I don't want distractions." He was a distraction all week when he wouldn't even name a starting quarterback. And the players, I was listening to one of the former Patriots explain this. A lot of these players only care about where they're going to be employed next year. And if Belichick starts to lose the locker room because they don't want to play for him because they don't have a 3-year plan, they're worried about getting hired next year. Not everyone makes the money of Mahomes and some of the stars. A lot of these players do need to be employed, and they want to know where they're playing, and they want to have competitive games so they look like they can win. And if Belichick, I mean, the confusion in the first half and that one play when Mac Jones kind of missed the receiver, and it was supposed to be a 7 route. He's supposed to keep running, and he kind of just lofted it out of bounds before the other interceptions. The team is off. They're not well coached. They're confused. They're deer in the headlights. Jones is broken. I mean, you could see this the last few weeks. So now you're like, okay, we can't stink that bad the rest of the season, or we're going to start losing fans, like not just fans on TV that don't pay for the cold beverages and the parking at the stadium, like real fans that pay for the money we make. So I think you're going to see the old Bill, do you want to coach next year? Okay, we're gonna cut a deal sooner because we can't continue this. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I don't think it's continuing. Okay, the only one they have, the only two they have a chance at are Chargers and Jets, and even those are marginal. The Broncos are playing. I mean, they got another one. They what 4 or 5 in the row, and Cleveland's a good team. So you're telling me that if you're Robert Kraft, you're going to take 5 more losses that ugly because that's what you're looking at. Well, he's also loyal to his wallet. One thing I noticed, whether it's Jones and Dallas, these billionaire owners, they do have an eye on the bottom line. All right. Hey, coming up, Doug Taney is going to weigh in a little bit on the economy. Brad Carr is going to tell us what's happening in Washington, and we're going to see. But what a situation, because we're in that period now where just the optics of Joe Biden again coming out of the weekend. You know, do the Democrats really see him as their nominee and a chance of becoming reelected? I think that's getting dimmer by the day, and I mean that sincerely. Then on the Republican side, it really looks like it's coming down to the push here in New Hampshire after the Iowa caucus. It's pretty clear DeSantis is putting a lot of his marbles and investment into Iowa with some big endorsements, but what happens in Iowa sometimes stays in Iowa. It doesn't really transfer in New Hampshire. Then all of a sudden you get the run up to January 23rd, which is, in a calendar year is not that far away, 50 plus days. And then all of a sudden Trump's got this big lead here. And is he unstoppable? Is there anyone at all who can catch on the Republican side Donald Trump? And of course, we'll see right here first and foremost. We're going to take a quick break. Good Morning New Hampshire, powered by GMI Asphalt and Paving, now paying up to $35 per hour for seasonal workers statewide. Call Christina, simply text PAVE, PAV, to 78,000 now. Some commentary coming up a little bit later on. One thing I noticed over the holidays, and even with the New York Giants game yesterday with DeVito, the quarterback, is how many older people, when I say older, young older people getting into their 20s, not 18, not 19. It's a whole generational thing in their mid to upper 20s, living at home with their parents. And I'm seeing that more and more and reading about that more and more. And you can talk about the cost of rent, the cost of buying a house, but more and more young people are staying or moving back in with the parents. And we'll have some thoughts on that in the 10 o'clock hour. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Jack, Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Pretty nice looking Monday, gusty overnight. Back in a moment. All right, welcome back. Hopefully, you're having a good start to our week. A lot of you had a good break. Imagine, even though it's probably a short, if they flew, short short plane ride home from from New Jersey or wherever they flew out of the Patriots, the jet. But that must be a dreadful flight home. Oh, no one probably talking, heads down. Oh my goodness. It was just awful, terrible. But it's been like that the last few weeks, just awful to watch. All right, switching gears, we'll see what's going to happen now in the House in Washington in the next few weeks before the end of the year, and a lot more. And the presidential primary, the Iowa caucus, just 50 days away, and the presidential sweepstakes, if you will. A lot happening right here in the first in the nation presidential primary state. Brad Card and Associates, one of our political analysts and all-stars, joining us on this Monday. Brad, hope you had a good Thanksgiving weekend, and I'm sure with you some golf was involved, but you're playing way too much golf. But anyway, good morning. Hope you're doing well. No, both actually, both. Well, what's catching your eye, and what next few weeks? Let's start with the House because you know they averted, they got a spending deal, if you will, and so what's next before the old end of the year stuff? They're so overworked down there. Well, I'd love to see Congress become a complete, like New Hampshire's legislature, complete volunteer body. You go down there, your expenses are covered. You don't have the big staffs and professional budgets, and I think it would be a pretty healthy, change. But I know you're probably that's never going to happen. So how did that How did that, because a lot of people blame Trump for the divisiveness, but how did that, what you're describing, how did that come to be where one side versus the other and the American people bummed out and tuning out? How did that sort of come to be versus, a better working bipartisan relationship between, members of Congress? How did it kind of, what are the forces that led to it? Well, let, let me, yeah, before we let you go, Brad Card, one of our political analysts in our stores, I just want to ask you this because they're going to switch gears to, you have the caucus in Iowa coming, New Hampshire's primary. We know Joe Biden and the National Democrats aren't playing in the early states, so we know that. But why do I get, okay, here's the narrative. Here's the narrative in your neck of the woods, Washington, New York. The big, the Beltway narrative is it's Biden, Trump, like it or not. It's Biden and Trump. That's what's going to be your choices going into the conventions, and forget these third parties. Forget Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an independent. Forget Phillips running in New Hampshire as a Democrat. Forget maybe no labels and a Joe Manchin. It's going to be Biden and Trump. Why do I feel that model is going to change somehow, whether it's on Biden's side and probably more likely on Biden's side than Trump's side? Why do I feel that's not going to be the narrative, or do you think it will be? So hold on. So if that happens, and so many disenfranchised customers out there, known as voters, they're so turned off. They don't like either major party. They don't like what's happening in Washington. They don't like Biden or Trump as the choice. I'm being hypothetically, although I think there's a lot more enthusiastic Trump voters than Biden voters. My question is, where do they go? Where do they vote in the end? And if you had to say today, where do some of these other people who are going to be on the ballot, do they help or hurt? Who do they help or hurt? Trump? They help or hurt Biden? Because remember what Ross Perot did with Bush and Clinton. So how do you think this is going to cut if you had to say? You think Manchin runs? Yeah. But he says he's going to stay in. He's going to stay in. Obviously, he's focusing on New Hampshire. I know. What about someone you haven't brought up? What about Vivek Ramaswamy? He's been up in New Hampshire a lot. There was just an article. He picked out a Christmas tree here with his family. I think it was Candia campaign. He's been here a lot. Been on the show a lot. He seemed to sort of be rising as kind of the second place person, and then sort of plateauing. What about him? And obviously, and Governor Sununu, by the way, Chris Sununu has been taking some shots not only against Trump but saying people like Ramaswamy need to drop out. Well, that's maybe why some people liked him. Why do you think Christie hasn't, kind of, there was a period there, it might have been more than a month ago, where some of the polls that he was up to 12-13%. And then all of a sudden you saw this, I think it was maybe the debates, but Nikki Haley seemed to started to, in the national polls and local polls, Nikki Haley started to surge as sort of that second place choice to Trump. Ron DeSantis seemed to, if anything, went down a little bit, and Chris Christie's not been able to resonate, and maybe he's gone down as well, and Nikki Haley. So what do you attribute to the Haley up a little bit, DeSantis, Christie down? What is driving that? Right. Do you think Sununu endorses her? Do you think Sununu endorses her? Right. Right. All right. Because hey, uh, last thing, Senator Schumer saying before the holiday break, telling members of the Senate, you're not going anywhere. He's going to bring the Israeli and the Ukraine bills of support of the wars there to the floor. Did either one or both pass in the Senate? All right. All right. We have to run. Brad Card, a lot of ground covered, a lot of ground on this Monday after Thanksgiving. Brad Card live, Washington. Thank you, Brad. When we come back, Doug Tangman taking a look at Cyber Monday. J-Dog, shop till you drop online. Cyber Monday. Back on Good Morning Hampshire, the Pulse of an Age. J-Dog on the boards. Jack Heath back in a moment. We are back. We are back. Before we talk about Cyber Monday, knowing Doug Tengden, he wants to talk a little bit about the roar of the crowd at Killington, Vermont to watch probably the best American female skier in the world of all time. Doug, good morning. How many people there? Wow. 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 All right, Doug, Cyber Monday, shop till you drop online. Well, they usually drive it one way or the other, even though the Fed will do all they can to stamp it down. I'm still perplexed. The spending's there. People are finding the money, places, the shops, the restaurants, everything's still expensive. I don't see any breaks in the action at all myself on inflation. That's just me. And low unemployment rate, one of the lowest in the country here in New Hampshire. And, it just a lot of people, though. I don't know if people are doing the second job thing. I'm just curious sometimes where some of the money comes from, but that's just me. Yeah. What do you, what Doug, I'm not sure if you run into this, but one thing I've noticed, I've been reading more about this, and I know there are reasons such as rent is very expensive to rent anything. People aren't giving up low mortgages, so new housing is not available. The cost of a new home for a younger person under the age of 30, 35 is very prohibitive. But the number of, I've been amazed at people in our own circle and just people I talk to who are remarking on this. The model when we grew up, was when you are 18 or 22, if you go to college, or 20, you are out of the house unless there's really an extenuating circumstance. You are on your own. You fly the nest like birds do in the spring. You are on your own. Go out there and figure it out. Get some roommates if it's tough. Get a few jobs. Figure out what you're going to do when you grow up. The number of younger people, and I define younger people, 25 to 30, 32 years old, living at home with their parents for no real reason that I can see, other than the parents say it's okay. And I don't know if I blame the kid. You see where I'm going with this. You must hear and see this more. Yeah. But but eventually everyone gets older, including the parents. So when that kid's now all of a sudden 35, 38, and they're still at home and they're looking at 40 versus 20 years old, are they ever going to be able to go out and fend for themselves? No, it's a big shift. It's a big shift from a few generations ago when you were 18 or 20 years old. You were gone. Well, I think it was a generational thing. It's like, okay, Interesting. You could hear the crowd cheering. All right, Doug, thank you very much. I was talking to someone over the weekend too with a lot of the college campus stuff at universities and this anti-Semitism you've been seeing. And one of the people I was talking to, a parent, made a very good point. Parents have a responsibility. And if the kids aren't going to be taught real history in their schools about what happened during World War II with Hitler and the Jewish population and people, and 6.2 million Jewish people just basically wiped out by Hitler and the Nazis. If people aren't going to teach that in colleges or talk about what Hamas did, the terrorists, on October 7th in Israel to start this war, to end the ceasefire, then parents have a responsibility. If parents have a responsibility to teach their kids, if university professors have an agenda that's not to teach them, history and maybe a political agenda. So, parents do have a role. And sometimes I don't blame these kids if mom and dad say, oh, yeah, you can move home and you're 29 years old and it's okay. You can stay here and don't worry about it. Get a job and live at home. Whether we do your laundry or or you eat the same food out of the fridge, don't worry about it. Parents do have a role. And sometimes I can't blame the kids. There's some commentary. 603-228-2080. I mean, if the door is open, the door is open. Although when you think of like the animal species in birds, there'd be a lot more birds in the nest that would stay forever on your porch versus fly away. But anyway, all right. When we come back, Anna Brown, Citizens Count, citizenscount.org on deck. A little bit later on, Aaron Real, NBC News Radio national correspondent. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards. It's a Monday morning post-Thanksgiving, 50 days to that Iowa caucus, and then around the corner, a week later, January 23rd, New Hampshire First the Nation presidential primary. Can anyone on the Republican side catch Trump? And will Biden win New Hampshire in a write-in or not? Find out on Good Morning Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.